I was alone on a blind date. Then a Mafia boss whispered this to me. The first thing he said wasn't hello. It was a whisper that shattered my pulse. Your blind date was a setup. The man they sent to kill you is sitting at the bar. Then he smiled, slow, dangerous. But tonight, you're mine to protect. If you're ready to enjoy this story, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Your support helps us in creating more amazing stories, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's jump right into the story. The candlelight at Rosewood's flickered against the darkening windows as I sat alone at my corner table, checking my phone for what had to be the 10th time in 20 minutes. At 29, I'd been on enough blind dates to recognize the warning signs. And tonight was screaming them. My best friend Emma had insisted I needed this. You work too hard, Jules, she'd said. This guy is perfect for you. Successful, charming, exactly what you need. But it was now 30 minutes past 8, and the chair across from me remained painfully empty. I smoothed down my deep green velvet dress, the one that usually made me feel confident, and tried to ignore the waiter's pitying glances. I was reaching for my purse when I felt it. A shift in the air. A presence. Then a voice, low and controlled, spoke directly behind me. Don't turn around. My hand froze mid-reach. My pulse stuttered. The voice continued, barely above a whisper. Your date's not coming, but the men watching you think he did. Every instinct screamed danger, but curiosity, or maybe fear, rooted me in place. Against every rule of self-preservation, I turned my head slightly. A man sat at the table behind me, close enough that I wondered how I hadn't noticed him before. Dark suit, perfectly tailored, hair slicked back, and tattoos, intricate, deliberate, curling up his neck like smoke. His eyes met mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. Who are you? I managed to whisper. Someone who's about to save your life, he said calmly. My name's Randy Wood. And you're Julia Bell. The fact that he knew my name should have terrified me. It did. But before I could stand, before I could run, he slid his phone across the narrow space between our tables. On the screen was a photo of me, sitting in this restaurant, in this dress, taken from outside, through the window, minutes ago. They sent this 5 minutes ago, Randy murmured, his voice steady and cold. You were the bait, Julia. Your date was never real. My mind spun. This had to be a joke. A prank. Some terrible. The door opened. 2 men in dark coats stepped inside, their eyes scanning the restaurant with predatory focus. They moved like hunters, methodical and patient. Randy leaned closer, his voice dropping even lower. Smile. Pretend you're with me. Now. I didn't think. I obeyed. I turned fully toward him, forcing my lips into something that might pass for a smile. Randy shifted smoothly, draping his arm along the back of my chair as if we'd been together all evening. His hand rested on my shoulder, a stranger's touch that felt both terrifying and, inexplicably, protective. The men's gazes swept past us. They lingered near the entrance for what felt like an eternity, then stepped back outside. I exhaled shakily. Randy withdrew his arm, but didn't move away. What the hell is happening? I whispered, my voice trembling. Not here, he said quietly, standing. He adjusted his cufflinks with deliberate calm, then looked down at me. You can walk out that door alone, and they'll follow you home. Or you can walk out with me. I stared at him. At this stranger who somehow knew my name, who had a photo of me on his phone, who moved like violence wrapped in expensive fabric. Every logical part of my brain screamed run. But the men outside, whoever they were real. The photo was real. And something in Randy Wood's eyes told me he was telling the truth. I stood, legs unsteady, and picked up my purse. Where are we going? I asked. Randy's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his gaze. Approval, maybe. Or satisfaction. Somewhere they won't find you, he said. At least not tonight. He gestured toward the back of the restaurant, and I followed him past the bar, through the kitchen where staff barely glanced up, and out into the cool night air. Rain had started to fall, light but steady, making the pavement glisten under the streetlights. A black sedan waited at the curb, sleek and expensive, with tinted windows that revealed nothing. Randy opened the passenger door. I hesitated at the threshold, one foot on the curb, one step away from a decision I couldn't take back. "I don't even know you," I said. Randy looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Then he spoke, his voice carrying a promise and a warning all at once. "You will." I got in the car. And that was the moment everything changed. The car smelled of leather and something darker, smoke, maybe whiskey, and a faint trace of cologne that was both expensive and dangerous. The engine purred to life, and Randy pulled away from the curb with the kind of smooth precision that suggested he'd done this before. Many times. I sat rigid in the passenger seat, my purse clutched in my lap like a shield, watching the rain streak across the tinted windows. The restaurant's warm glow disappeared behind us, swallowed by the wet streets and shadowed buildings. "Where are we going?" I asked again, my voice steadier than I felt. "Somewhere we can talk," Randy said, his eyes fixed on the road. "Somewhere they can't listen."
They.
He kept saying they like I was supposed to know who he meant. Like I was part of this nightmare I didn't understand. I turned to look at him properly for the first time. In the dim light from the dashboard, his profile was sharp, angular jaw, straight nose, and those tattoos crawling up his neck. They disappeared beneath his collar, and I found myself wondering how far they went. What stories they told. "You said my date was a setup," I said, forcing myself to focus. "A setup for what?"
Who were those men?
Randy's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "How much do you know about your ex-fiancée, Julia?" The question hit me like a slap. "Marcus? What does he have to do with this?" "Everything," Randy said quietly. He took a left turn, heading deeper into the city's industrial district. "When did you last see him?" "A year ago," I said, my throat tight. "He disappeared. Just vanished one day. Took his things and left." I swallowed hard. The police said he probably just didn't want to get married. That he ran. "He ran," Randy agreed. "But not from you." He pulled into an underground parking garage, the kind attached to expensive high-rises where security cameras watched every corner. We spiraled down 2 levels before Randy parked in a spot marked private. He killed the engine, and suddenly the silence felt suffocating. Randy turned to face me fully. "Marcus stole money, Julia. A lot of it. From people who don't forgive debts." "That's impossible," I said automatically. Marcus was an accountant.
He was boring.
He wouldn't. "He laundered $2 million through a series of shell companies," Randy interrupted, his voice matter-of-fact. "Money that belonged to my associates. And when they figured it out, he disappeared." He paused. "With their cash." My head spun. "Marcus? The man who organized his socks by color and panicked when I suggested we get a dog because it was too much responsibility." "That Marcus? I don't understand," I whispered. "Why would someone set up a fake date with me? I don't know anything about Marcus's business. I didn't even know my voice cracked. I didn't know." Randy studied me with those unsettling dark eyes, and I had the horrible feeling he could see straight through me. See every doubt, every fear, every secret I kept locked away. "They think you do," he finally said. "They think Marcus told you where the money is. Or that he left you something, a note, a key, access codes. Something." "But he didn't," I said desperately. "He just left. There was nothing. No note, no explanation, nothing." "I believe you," Randy said, and somehow that was worse than if he'd accused me. Because if he believed me, and they didn't... "So, what happens now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Those men, they're going to keep coming for me?" Randy reached into his jacket, and I flinched. But he only pulled out another phone, not the one from the restaurant, a different one. He unlocked it with his thumb and pulled up a photo. "There's something else you need to see," he said. He handed me the phone. The image loaded slowly, and when it did, my blood ran cold. It was a surveillance photo, grainy and dark, taken from a distance. But I recognized the location immediately, my apartment building. The timestamp read 6:47 p.m. Less than 2 hours ago. In the photo, a man stood across the street, watching my window. His face was partially obscured, but his posture radiated intent. "They've been watching you for weeks," Randy said quietly. "Tonight wasn't random. The blind date was bait, a way to get you out of your apartment, vulnerable and alone." I couldn't breathe.
Couldn't think.
Why didn't they just... I couldn't finish the sentence. "Take you from your home?" Randy finished. Too messy. Too many witnesses. But a woman stood up on a blind date, walking home alone at night? He shook his head. Much cleaner. I looked up at him, and the question that had been building since the restaurant finally burst free. "Why are you helping me?" Randy's expression shifted, something almost like regret flickering across his features. "Because I know more about Marcus than I've told you," he said. "And because..." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Because once they decide you're involved, there's no convincing them otherwise. They'll hurt you to get answers you don't have." "And you care about that?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "You're one of them, aren't you? One of these people Marcus stole from?" Randy held my gaze. "Yes." The single word hung between us, heavy with implications I didn't want to examine. "Then why?" I whispered. "Why warn me? Why save me?" Randy reached over and took the phone from my trembling hands. His fingers brushed mine, warm and steady. "Because you looked like you didn't belong in this world," he said softly. "And I wanted to see what would happen if you survived it." He opened his door, and cold air rushed in. "Come on. My apartment's upstairs. You'll be safe there tonight." "Safe." I almost laughed. "With you." Randy paused, one foot out of the car. When he looked back at me, something dark flickered in his eyes. "Safer than anywhere else," he said. "That's the best I can offer." I should have run. Should have called the police, my friends, anyone. But those men knew where I lived. They'd been watching me for weeks. And Randy Wood, dangerous, tattooed, terrifying Randy Wood, had saved me when he had no reason to. So I got out of the car and followed him into the shadows. The elevator ride to Randy's penthouse was silent except for the soft hum of machinery and my own thundering heartbeat. I watched the numbers climb, 10, 15, 20, each floor taking me further from the world I knew and deeper into one I didn't. Randy stood beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him, but he didn't speak, didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead with that unreadable expression that made me wonder what he was thinking. What he wasn't telling me. The elevator chimed softly at the 24th floor. "This way," Randy said, gesturing down a hallway that looked more like a hotel than an apartment building. Soft lighting, expensive artwork, thick carpet that muffled our footsteps. He stopped at the last door and unlocked it with a keycard. The door swung open to reveal a space that took my breath away, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, sleek modern furniture, everything in shades of black, gray, and chrome. It was beautiful and cold, like stepping into a magazine spread. "Make yourself comfortable," Randy said, shrugging off his jacket and draping it over a chair. Without it, I could see more of the tattoos that decorated his arms, intricate patterns that looked like they told a story. "Do you want something to drink? Water? Something stronger?" "Answers," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "I want answers, Randy." He turned to look at me, and for a moment, something almost like amusement flickered across his face. "Fair enough." He moved to the bar along the far wall and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid anyway. Whiskey, from the smell of it. He brought one to me, and when I didn't take it, he set it on the coffee table. "Sit down, Julia," he said quietly. "I don't want to sit down. I want to know what the hell is going on." My hands were shaking, and I clenched them into fists. "You said Marcus stole money. From dangerous people. From your people." "That's right. And now they think I'm involved. That I know where he is." "Yes. But you know I don't," I said, my voice rising. "You said you believed me. So why?" I broke off, struggling to put the chaos in my head into words. "Why is this happening? Why now? It's been a year. Why come after me now? Randy took a slow sip of his whiskey, watching me over the rim of the glass. Because 2 weeks ago, someone accessed one of Marcus's old accounts. Moved a small amount of money, just enough to ping our system. My stomach dropped. I didn't. I know you didn't, Randy said calmly. But they don't. And the IP address traced back to your neighborhood. That doesn't mean anything, I said desperately. It could have been anyone. A neighbor, someone using public Wi-Fi. I know, Randy said again. But these aren't people who wait for proof, Julia. They see a connection, they act on it. He set down his glass. That's why they set up the blind date. To see if you'd show. To see how you'd react. And if I'd just gone home? I whispered. What would have happened? Randy's silence was answer enough. I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. This can't be real. This is insane. I'm an event planner. I organize weddings and corporate parties. I'm not part of whatever world you're in. You are now, Randy said quietly. He moved to sit across from me, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. The moment Marcus put your name on his emergency contacts, the moment he listed your address as his residence, you became part of it. I didn't ask for this. No one ever does. I looked up at him, this stranger, who somehow held my life in his hands. What do they want from me, Randy? If I don't know where Marcus is, if I don't have the money, what do they want? Randy's jaw tightened. They want to make sure you're telling the truth. And their methods of verification aren't.
He paused.
Pleasant. A chill ran down my spine. You mean they'd hurt me? Yes. The single word was like a physical blow. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the apartment. So, what do I do? Go to the police. Randy's laugh was harsh. And tell them what? That you're being hunted by organized crime because your ex-fiancé stole money? They'll put you in protective custody for maybe a week, then send you back to your life. And the people looking for you? He shook his head. They're patient. They'll wait. Then what? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. What am I supposed to do? Randy stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the glittering cityscape. You stay here tonight. Tomorrow, I'll take you back to your apartment. We need to see if they've been inside, if Marcus left anything that might help. Help with what? Finding him, Randy said simply. Or finding the money. Either way, it ends this. I stared at his back, at the way his shoulders filled out his shirt, at the tattoos that disappeared beneath the fabric. And if we can't find either? Randy turned to face me, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. Then we convince them another way.
How?
By making them believe you're under my protection, he said. And that taking you would cost them more than any amount of money is worth. I stood slowly, my mind reeling. Why would you do that?
You don't know me.
You don't owe me anything. Randy crossed the room until he stood directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. No, he agreed. I don't. Then why? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers gentle despite the calluses I could feel against my skin. Because tonight, when you could have run, you trusted me instead, he said quietly. And it's been a long time since anyone's been that brave or that stupid. I'm not sure which one I am, I whispered. Randy's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Neither am I. But I'm curious to find out. He stepped back, breaking the spell. The guest room is down the hall, second door on the left. There's clothes in the closet if you need them. Previous tenant left them. Bathrooms attached. Get some rest, Julia. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. I wanted to argue, to demand more answers, to understand how my life had spiraled so completely out of control in the span of a few hours. But exhaustion was setting in, bone deep and overwhelming. Thank you, I said instead, for tonight, for saving me. Randy's expression darkened. Don't thank me yet, he said. You don't know what I'm saving you for. He turned away before I could respond, dismissing me without another word. I walked down the hall on unsteady legs, found the guest room, as impersonal and perfect as the rest of the apartment, and closed the door behind me. Only then did I let myself fall apart. I slid down the door and buried my face in my hands, my whole body shaking with silent sobs. Because Randy was right. I'd stepped into a world I didn't understand, and I had no idea how to get back out. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, knowing that somewhere out there, men were watching, waiting, believing I held secrets I didn't possess? Every sound in Randy's penthouse made me jump. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant wail of sirens, the creak of old pipes settling. By the time pale morning light filtered through the guest room curtains, I'd made a decision. I needed to go back to my life. My apartment.
My job.
I couldn't hide forever. Randy was already awake when I emerged, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, drinking coffee at the kitchen island like this was just another morning. Like he hadn't upended my entire existence the night before. "I need to go to work," I announced. He looked up, his expression unreadable. "No, you don't." "Yes, I do," I said firmly. "I have a wedding consultation at 10 and a corporate event to finalize by Friday. I can't just disappear." "Julia." "I'm going," I interrupted. "You can't keep me here." Randy studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly.
Fine.
"But I'm driving you." And he did. But that was 3 days ago. 3 days of returning to what should have been normal life, except nothing was normal anymore. Because Randy was everywhere. The first time I saw him, I just picked up my morning latte from Brewster's, the cafe 2 blocks from my office. I was checking emails on my phone when I felt that familiar prickle of awareness. I looked up, and there he was, sitting at a corner table, newspaper open, dark sunglasses hiding his eyes. Watching. I'd stormed over, furious. "Are you following me?" "I'm having coffee," he'd replied calmly, not even looking up from his paper. "At the same cafe where I get coffee every morning?" "Good coffee." He'd taken a sip, proving his point. The second time was outside my office building. I'd worked late finalizing seating charts for the Morrison wedding, and when I stepped outside at 8 p.m., Randy's black sedan was idling at the curb. "Get in," he'd said through the open window. "I'm taking an Uber." "Not anymore." We'd driven in silence, tension crackling between us like electricity. The third time, this morning, I'd had enough. I walked straight up to his table at Brewster's, slammed my coffee down hard enough that foam sloshed over the rim, and leaned in close. "Stop following me," I hissed, acutely aware of the other customers pretending not to watch. "This is harassment, Randy. I could call the police." Randy finally looked up, pulling down his sunglasses just enough that I could see his eyes.
Dark.
Knowing. Infuriatingly calm. "Still think that blind date was an accident, Julia?" I froze. "Because I can show you more photos," he continued quietly. "From yesterday. The day before. They're still watching you. Still waiting to see if you'll lead them to Marcus or the money." He pushed his sunglasses back up. "So yes, I'm following you. Because if I can see you, so can they." The fight drained out of me. I sank into the chair across from him, suddenly exhausted. "How long is this going to last?" "Until we find what they're looking for," Randy said. "Or until they believe you don't have it." "And how do we make them believe that?" Randy's jaw tightened. "We're working on it." I picked up my coffee with shaking hands, no longer caring that it was lukewarm. "Tell me the truth, Randy. All of it. No more fragments, no more half-answers. If I'm going to live with a shadow, I deserve to know why." For a long moment, I thought he'd refuse. Then he folded his newspaper, set it aside, and leaned forward. "Your ex-fiancé, Marcus. He didn't just steal money. He laundered it through a nightclub I own on the waterfront. The Crimson Room. Used our books to hide transactions, created fake invoices, buried the trail so deep it took us 6 months to figure out what he'd done." Randy's voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the edge beneath it. By the time we traced it back to him, he'd vanished with $2 million that belonged to some very dangerous men. "And these men think I helped him," I whispered. "They think you know something. Where he went. Where the money is. Marcus listed you as his emergency contact, had mail forwarded to your address even after he left. From their perspective, you're either complicit or you're leverage. My hands trembled around my cup. I didn't know about any of this. I swear Marcus he never told me anything about his work. He said it was boring accounting stuff, audits, and spreadsheets. I believe you, Randy said, and somehow those 3 words steadied me more than anything else he'd said. But belief doesn't matter in this world, Julia. Evidence does. And right now, all the evidence points to you. I thought about Marcus, sweet, nervous Marcus who'd proposed on a beach at sunset, who'd cried during romantic movies, who'd disappeared without a word. Had I ever really known him? Or had I been in love with a ghost even before he vanished? So, what do we do? I asked. Tonight, I'm taking you back to your apartment. We need to search it properly, every drawer, every file, every email. If Marcus left anything, any clue about where he went or what he did with the money, we need to find it. The police already searched when I reported him missing. The police weren't looking for what I'm looking for, Randy said. A chill ran through me. And, what are you looking for? Randy's expression darkened. Proof that you're innocent. Because if we can't find it, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. That evening, Randy picked me up from work in his usual spot. I slid into the passenger seat without argument, too tired and too frightened to fight anymore. As we drove through the darkening streets toward my apartment, I found myself studying his profile again. The sharp line of his jaw, the tattoos creeping up his neck, the way his hands gripped the steering wheel with controlled precision. Why are you really helping me? I asked quietly. And don't say it's because I looked like I didn't belong.
There has to be more to it than that.
Randy was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, your ex stole from me, Julia. From my business. That makes this personal. So, I'm what? Revenge? A way to get back at Marcus?
No.
The word came out sharp. He glanced at me, something fierce flickering in his eyes. You're the only innocent person in this entire mess. And I'm tired of watching innocent people get hurt because of men like Marcus. Men like me. The admission hung between us, raw and honest. You're not like Marcus, I said softly. Randy's laugh was bitter. You don't know what I'm like, Julia. You don't know what I've done. Then tell me. No, he said quietly, pulling up to my building. Because if you knew, you'd stop looking at me the way you do. And how do I look at you? Randy turned off the engine and faced me fully. In the dim light from the street lamps, his eyes were impossibly dark. Like maybe I'm not the monster everyone says I am. My breath caught. Are you? He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed his thumb across my cheekbone. The touch was gentle, almost reverent, and completely at odds with everything I knew about him. Yes, he whispered. But not to you. Never to you. Then he pulled back and opened his door. Come on. Let's see what secrets your apartment's been hiding. I followed him into my building, my heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. And everything to do with the dangerous man who'd somehow become the only person I trusted in my rapidly crumbling world. My apartment had been torn apart. Not violently. There were no broken windows, no shattered furniture. But someone had been through every drawer, every closet, every box tucked away in corners I'd forgotten existed. Books pulled from shelves, cushions removed from the couch. Even the backing of picture frames had been carefully pried open and replaced. Professional. Thorough. Terrifying. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hand still on the light switch, unable to process what I was seeing. Randy moved past me, his body shifting into something coiled and alert. He checked each room methodically, gun drawn. When had he pulled that? Clearing corners like he'd done this 1,000 times before. They're gone, he said finally, holstering the weapon beneath his jacket. But they'll be back. How did they? My voice cracked. The locks, the security. Means nothing to people like this. Randy turned to face me, his expression grim. Pack a bag, Julia. You're not staying here. Where am I supposed to go? My place. He said it like it was obvious. Like there was no other option. Randy, I can't just. You can and you will. His voice was firm, but not unkind. A few nights until we figure this out. Your apartment isn't safe anymore. I wanted to argue, to insist I'd be fine, that I could handle this alone. But the evidence of invasion surrounded me. My private space violated, my life picked apart by strangers searching for secrets I didn't have. So I packed a bag. 20 minutes later, we were back in Randy's penthouse, and I was trying not to feel like I'd crossed some invisible line I could never uncross. The first night, I barely left the guest room. The second night, Randy ordered takeout, expensive Thai food that arrived in real dishes, not containers, and insisted I eat with him. You can't hide forever, he'd said, setting a plate in front of me at the dining table. And I'm not going to bite. You might, I'd muttered, but I'd sat down anyway. By the third night, something had shifted. I found myself in the kitchen around midnight, unable to sleep, searching for tea or warm milk or anything to quiet my racing thoughts. Randy was already there, standing by the windows in a black t-shirt and sweatpants, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Can't sleep? He asked without turning around. Too quiet, I admitted. My apartment always had noise, neighbors, traffic, the couple upstairs arguing about whose turn it is to do dishes. I wrapped my arms around myself. This place feels like a tomb. Randy's lips quirked. I've heard worse descriptions. I moved to stand beside him, looking out at the city spread below us like a carpet of stars. Do you ever get lonely up here? Lonely implies wanting something I don't have, Randy said quietly. I stopped wanting things a long time ago. That's sad. That's survival. I glanced at him, really looked at him without the fear and adrenaline clouding my vision. In the soft light, I could see scars I'd never noticed before, a thin line along his jaw, another disappearing into his hairline. Battle wounds from a life I couldn't imagine. How old were you? I asked. When this life started? Randy took a slow sip of his whiskey. 17. My father died owing money to the wrong people. They came for payment and I didn't have it. He paused. So I offered them something else. My loyalty. My skills. Whatever they needed. That's horrible. That's reality, he corrected. For people like me, anyway. He finally looked at me, and something in his eyes made my breath catch. People like you don't understand that world. You think there are choices, second chances, ways out. Aren't there? Not for everyone. I turned to face him fully, emboldened by the darkness and the intimacy of the moment. Is that why you're helping me? Because you think I still have choices? Randy set down his glass and moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with whiskey and something uniquely him. I'm helping you because when I saw you sitting in that restaurant, waiting for someone who is never going to show, you looked. He paused, searching for words. You looked like hope, like something untouched by all the ugliness I see every day. I'm not untouched, I whispered. Marcus left me. My trust is broken. I plan weddings because I stopped believing in my own happy ending. But you still believe they exist, Randy said softly. For other people. That's the difference between us, Julia. You still have faith in something good. And you don't. His hand came up slowly, cupping my cheek with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so dangerous. I didn't, he murmured. Until I met you. The air between us crackled with something electric, something neither of us could name, but both of us felt. I should have stepped back. Should have remembered that this man was dangerous, that he lived in a world of violence and secrets, that getting close to him could destroy me. But I didn't move. Randy. I breathed, not even sure what I was asking for. His thumb traced my cheekbone, his dark eyes searching mine. Tell me to stop, Julia. Tell me this is a bad idea, and I'll walk away right now. I knew it was a bad idea. Knew it with every logical part of my brain. But my heart, my traitorous, foolish heart, had other plans. I don't want you to stop, I whispered. Something shifted in his expression, control slipping, walls crumbling. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to change my mind, to run, to save myself. I didn't. His lips met mine softly at first, almost questioning. But when I kissed him back, when my hands found their way to his chest and felt his heart racing as fast as mine, the kiss deepened, became something hungry and desperate and completely inevitable. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Randy rested his forehead against mine. "This is dangerous," he murmured. "What we're doing, it complicates everything." "I know. You should stay away from me." "I know that too." Randy's arms wrapped around me, pulling me close, and I let myself sink into his warmth, into the strange safety I felt in the arms of a man who should terrify me. "Why are you really helping me?" I asked against his chest. The truth this time. Randy was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Because you looked like you didn't belong in this world. And I wanted to see what would happen if you stayed." I pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "What if I do stay?" His expression darkened with something that looked like longing mixed with fear. "Then God help us both, Julia. Because I don't know if I can keep you safe from this world." He paused, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. "Or, if I can keep you safe from me." "Maybe I don't need to be kept safe," I said quietly. "Maybe I just need someone to stand with me while I figure out how to fight back." Randy's smile was sad and beautiful and completely genuine. "Then we're both fools." "Probably," I agreed. He kissed me again, slower this time, like he was memorizing the moment. And I kissed him back, knowing that everything was about to change. That somewhere between fear and trust, between danger and safety, I'd fallen for the last man I should ever love. The man who might be the only one who could save me. Or destroy me completely. The kiss changed everything. Or maybe it changed nothing, and I was just finally willing to see what had been there all along. Either way, the days that followed blurred together in a haze of tension and unspoken desire. Randy became a constant presence, not just at night in the penthouse, but everywhere. At the coffee shop where I met clients. Outside the venue where I was coordinating the Morrison wedding. In the parking garage of my office building. Always watching. Always there. At first, I told myself it was protection. That he was keeping me safe like he'd promised. But protection didn't explain the way his hand lingered on my back when he guided me through doorways. Or the possessive edge in his voice when a male client shook my hand a moment too long. Or the way his eyes tracked my every movement like I might disappear if he looked away. It wasn't protection anymore. It was obsession. And God help me, part of me liked it. "You need to stop," I said on the 5th day, cornering him in his kitchen after I'd found him waiting outside my office building again. "This is too much, Randy." He looked up from his phone, expression neutral. "What is this?" I gestured wildly between us. "Following me everywhere. Showing up unannounced. I can't breathe without you there." "That's the point," he said calmly. "If I can't breathe without knowing where you are, you don't breathe without me there. That's not normal. Nothing about this situation is normal, Julia." He set down his phone and stood, moving toward me with that predatory grace that made my pulse spike. "You think I'm doing this for fun? You think I enjoy watching you every second, wondering if today's the day they make their move?" "I think you're using protection as an excuse," I shot back. "This isn't about keeping me safe anymore. This is about control." Randy's jaw tightened. "You want me to back off? Fine. I'll give you space." He grabbed his jacket from the chair. "But when they come for you, and they will, don't expect me to be there to stop them." "Randy, you think I'm your enemy," he said, turning to face me. His eyes were dark with something I couldn't name, anger, fear, something deeper. "But look at me, Julia. Really look at me. I'm the only thing keeping you alive." The words hung between us, heavy with truth I didn't want to acknowledge. "That doesn't give you the right to own me," I whispered. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or regret. "No," he agreed quietly. "It doesn't." He left without another word, and I stood in the empty penthouse feeling like I'd just won a battle but lost something far more important. That night, I dreamed of him. We were back in the restaurant, candlelight flickering between us, but this time there was no fear. Only his voice, low and commanding, whispering things that made my skin burn. His hands tracing the tattoos on his neck, then reaching for me. The storm in his eyes as he pulled me close, as his lips found mine, as everything else faded away until there was nothing but him. Just him. Always him. I woke gasping, my heart racing, sheets tangled around my legs. The guest room was dark except for the city lights filtering through the curtains. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to calm my breathing, trying to forget the dream that felt more like a memory of something that hadn't happened yet. That's when I saw it. A slip of white paper on the floor by the door. My blood ran cold. I stumbled out of bed and picked it up with shaking hands. 3 words in harsh, blocky handwriting. They found you. The door burst open before I could scream. Randy filled the doorway, dressed only in sweatpants, gun in hand, his expression absolutely murderous. His eyes scanned the room, landed on me, then dropped to the note in my trembling fingers. When, he demanded, stalking forward. I just woke up and it was there. He took the note, studied it, and his expression went from murderous to lethal.
Get dressed. Now.
Randy, what? Now, Julia? I'd never heard him yell before. The sound jolted me into action. I grabbed jeans and a sweater from my bag, pulling them on with shaking hands while Randy made phone calls in clipped, dangerous tones. Don't care what time it is. Someone got past building security and into my apartment. I want to know how and I want to know who. 5 minutes. I want answers in 5 minutes, or head start rolling. He hung up and turned to me. Pack everything. We're leaving. Leaving? Where? Somewhere they can't find you. He moved to the window, peering out at the street below. This building was supposed to be secure. Someone on my payroll either got sloppy or got bought. His hands clenched into fists. Either way, they're dead. The casual way he said it, like he was discussing the weather, sent ice through my veins. Randy, I whispered, you can't just kill people because... He spun to face me, and the look in his eyes froze the words in my throat. Yes, I can. Because someone just walked into my home, and threatened what's mine. That doesn't happen without consequences. What's yours? I repeated faintly. Randy crossed the room in 3 strides, cupped my face in his hands, and forced me to meet his gaze. You, Julia. You're mine. And I don't care if that makes me a monster. I don't care if you hate me for it. But I will burn this entire city down before I let them hurt you. My breath caught at the raw possessiveness in his voice. At the truth I saw in his eyes. This wasn't just protection anymore. Maybe it never had been. This was something darker.
Deeper.
More dangerous than anything Marcus had ever gotten me into. You're scaring me, I whispered. Good, Randy said roughly. You should be scared. Because this world, my world, it's not just dangerous, Julia. It's fatal. And the fact that you're in it now, that they know about you, that they're willing to breach my territory to get to you. He shook his head. This isn't a game anymore. This is war. What do we do? His thumb traced my lips, gentle despite the violence simmering beneath his skin. We disappear for a few days. I have a safe house outside the city. Somewhere they won't find us while I figure out who's behind this. And then, Randy's smile was sharp and cold and absolutely terrifying. Then I remind everyone why they should be afraid of me. He dropped his hands and stepped back, switching from the man who'd kissed me like I was precious to the man who'd just threatened murder without blinking. 2 minutes, Julia. Then we go. I nodded, unable to form words, and finished packing while Randy made more calls, his voice getting colder and more dangerous with each one. When we finally left the penthouse, taking a private elevator to an underground garage I didn't know existed, I realized something that should have terrified me, but didn't. Randy Wood wasn't just dangerous.
He was deadly.
And somehow, impossibly, I'd become the thing he'd kill for. The thing he'd die for. The thing he'd go to war to protect. I should have run while I still could. But as we sped through the empty streets toward an unknown destination, Randy's hand finding mine in the darkness, I knew the truth. I was already too far gone to save. And I wasn't sure I wanted to be saved anymore. The safe house was nothing like Randy's penthouse. Where his apartment had been all sleek lines and modern luxury, this place was rustic, a cabin tucked deep in the woods 2 hours outside the city. Wood beams, stone fireplace, windows that looked out onto endless trees. It smelled of pine and old smoke, isolated and hidden from the world. "We'll be safe here," Randy had said when we arrived in the pre-dawn darkness. "No one knows about this place except me." That had been 2 days ago. 2 days of waiting. Of Randy making phone calls in hushed tones while I paced the cabin like a caged animal. Of meals eaten in tense silence. Of nights spent in separate rooms, the kiss we'd shared feeling like it had happened in another lifetime. I was going stir-crazy. On the third morning, Randy left to meet with someone, he wouldn't say who, and told me to stay inside, stay quiet, stay hidden. I lasted an hour before I started exploring. The cabin was small, living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. I'd already memorized every corner. But boredom made me thorough, and that's when I found it. A locked drawer in the desk tucked in the corner of Randy's bedroom. I should have left it alone. Should have respected his privacy. But 3 days of fear and questions and half-truths had worn away my better judgment. I found a hairpin in the bathroom and worked the lock until it clicked open. Inside was a folder. Plain manila, nothing special. Except for what was inside. The first page was a contract, legal paperwork for the Crimson Room, Randy's club. I skimmed it, not understanding most of the business jargon. Then I saw the name at the bottom. Marcus Chun, financial consultant. My hands started shaking. I flipped to the next page. Financial records. Account numbers. Transfers that made my head spin. And then I found the photo. It was old, maybe 5 years, slightly faded. 2 men standing outside a building I didn't recognize. One was younger, leaner, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit right. Marcus. The other man had his arms slung around Marcus's shoulders, both of them smiling like old friends. Randy. The folder slipped from my numb fingers, papers scattering across the floor. Randy knew Marcus. Not just knew him, they'd worked together. Been close enough to take photos together, to smile like they were friends. Everything Randy had told me about Marcus stealing money, about the investigation, about protecting me, it was all built on a lie. He'd known who I was from the beginning. The sound of a car approaching cut through my spiraling thoughts. I scrambled to shove everything back in the drawer, but my hands were shaking too badly. Papers fell. The photo fluttered to the floor. The front door opened. "Julia?" Randy's voice, calling from the living room. I stood frozen in his bedroom, evidence of his betrayal scattered at my feet as his footsteps approached. He appeared in the doorway and stopped. His eyes went to the open drawer, to the papers on the floor,
To the photo in my hand.
For one endless moment, neither of us moved. "How long have you known?" My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. "How long have you known who I was?" Randy's expression didn't change. "From the beginning." The admission hit like a physical blow. "The restaurant. You were there because of me." "Yes." "The warning. The photo. All of it, it was planned." "The danger was real," Randy said quietly. "The men watching you were real. I just wasn't the stranger I pretended to be." I looked down at the photo in my hands, Randy and Marcus, smiling like brothers. "You knew him. You worked with him." "I did. And when he stole from you," my voice cracked. "What did you do, Randy?" He stepped into the room, moving slowly, like I was a wounded animal that might bolt. "Julia. What did you do?" I screamed, surprising us both. Randy's jaw tightened. "He was a thief. He hurt you. And I don't let people like that walk away." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. "You killed him," I whispered. "You killed Marcus." "I ended it," Randy corrected, his voice terrifyingly calm. "There's a difference." The folder fell from my hands. "There's no difference. He's dead and you. I couldn't breathe.
Couldn't think.
You've been lying to me this entire time. Getting close to me. Making me trust you. Making me. I couldn't finish. Couldn't say the words that would make it real. Making me fall for you. I protected you, Randy said, moving closer. Everything I did was to keep you safe. By lying to me, tears burned my eyes. By killing the man I almost married, by ending the threat before it destroyed you. His voice rose for the first time. Marcus didn't just steal money, Julia. He put you on their radar. He made you a target, and when I found out what he'd done, what he dragged you into, I made sure he could never hurt you again. That wasn't your decision to make. I shoved at his chest, rage and grief and betrayal pouring out of me. You don't get to decide who lives or dies. Randy caught my wrists, holding me still. It is when you're mine. The words were soft.
Deadly.
Final. I stared up at him, at this man I'd kissed, trusted, started to love, this man who'd just admitted to murder like he was discussing the weather. And I slapped him. The crack echoed through the cabin. Randy's head snapped to the side, but he didn't let go of my wrists. When he looked back at me, there was blood on his lip where my ring had caught skin. I hate you, I sobbed, even as tears streamed down my face. I hate you for lying, for killing him, for making me. My voice broke. For making me care about you. Randy's grip gentled, but he didn't release me. I know. Let me go.
No.
Randy. I said no. His voice was firm but not cruel. Because if I let you go, you'll run. And if you run, you'll die. The people looking for you don't care that you're innocent. They don't care that Marcus used you. They only care about sending a message. Then let them send it, I shouted. At least I won't be here with a murderer. Something flickered across Randy's face. Pain, maybe. I've been called worse. I don't doubt it. He finally released my wrists, stepping back to give me space. I'm not going to apologize for what I did to Marcus. He made his choices, and they had consequences. But I am sorry for lying to you.
He paused.
I should have told you the truth from the beginning. Why didn't you? I asked bitterly. Because I knew you'd look at me exactly the way you're looking at me now, Randy said quietly. Like I'm a monster. And I wanted. He stopped, shaking his head. It doesn't matter what I wanted. Tell me anyway. He met my eyes, and the raw honesty in his gaze nearly broke me. I wanted you to see me as the man who saved you, not the man who destroyed the life you almost had. Fresh tears spilled down my cheeks. You did both. I know. I grabbed my jacket from the chair, my vision blurred with tears. I need to leave. Julia. I need to leave. I shouted. I can't breathe in here. I can't look at you. I need space. Randy moved to block the door, and for a moment I thought he'd physically stop me. But then he stepped aside. The tree line, he said quietly. Don't go past it. There are cameras, alarms. You'll be safe as long as you stay within sight of the cabin. I pushed past him without responding, stumbling out into the cold morning air. I made it to the edge of the clearing before my legs gave out. I sank to the ground and let myself shatter, sobbing for Marcus, for the lies, for the truth I couldn't unknow. For the man in that cabin who'd killed someone I'd loved and somehow made me fall for him anyway. Because that was the worst part. Even knowing what Randy was, what he'd done, even hating him for it,
part of me still wanted him.
Still trusted him. Still believed that despite everything, he was the only person in this nightmare who genuinely cared if I lived or died. And that realization, that my heart had already chosen him despite my mind screaming to run, was the most terrifying thing of all. I stayed at the tree line for an hour before the cold drove me back inside. Randy was in the kitchen, blood still on his lip from where I'd slapped him, staring at nothing. He looked up when I entered, but didn't speak. Didn't apologize again. Just watched me with those dark, unreadable eyes. I need time, I said quietly, to process this. All of it. He nodded once. Take all the time you need. But time, it turned out, was something neither of us had. I left the next morning while Randy was in the shower. I know it was stupid. Reckless. Everything he'd warned me against. But I couldn't stay in that cabin with the truth suffocating me. Couldn't look at him without seeing Marcus's face. Without wondering what Randy's hands had done. I took Randy's keys from the counter, left a note that said only I'm sorry, and drove back toward the city. I made it 40 minutes before the black SUV appeared in my rearview mirror. My heart stopped. I pressed the accelerator, but the SUV matched my speed effortlessly. When I tried to exit the highway, it cut me off, forcing me onto a side road that led deeper into the industrial district. I grabbed my phone to call Randy and realized it was dead. I'd forgotten to charge it. Of course. The SUV bumped my rear fender, sending me swerving. I fought to control the car, but they hit me again, harder this time. The steering wheel jerked from my hands. Randy's car spun off the road and into a ditch. The last thing I saw before my head hit the window was men in dark coats approaching, their faces obscured by shadows. Then nothing. I woke to the smell of oil and salt water. My head throbbed. My wrists burned, zip-tied to a metal chair in the middle of a cavernous space. Weak sunlight filtered through grimy windows high above, illuminating concrete floors stained with things I didn't want to identify. A warehouse. Abandoned from the looks of it, somewhere near the docks. She's awake. I jerked at the voice. A man stepped from the shadows, mid-40s, expensive suit incongruous with the surroundings, smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. Julia Bell, he said pleasantly, like we were meeting at a dinner party. We've been looking for you. I don't know where the money is, I said immediately, my voice hoarse. I swear, I don't know anything. Oh, we know that now, the man interrupted. He pulled up a crate and sat across from me. Took some convincing, but Randy would finally admitted you're just an innocent caught in the crossfire. He tilted his head. The question is, what do we do with you now? My blood ran cold. You could let me go? He laughed. We could, but you've seen too much. Know too much about our operations. And more importantly, his smile sharpened. Your leverage against a man who's been a thorn in our side for far too long. Randy won't come for me. I lied desperately. I left him. We're nothing to each other. That's not what our sources say. The man stood, brushing off his pants. In fact, they say Randy Wood has become quite attached to you. Protective, even. That's a weakness we can exploit. He nodded to someone behind me. Rough hands grabbed my hair, yanking my head back. A cold metal pressed against my temple. A gun. So we wait, the man said calmly. And when Wood shows up, and he will, we end this once and for all. They didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, the warehouse door creaked open. Sunlight streamed in, silhouetting a single figure. Randy walked in slowly, hands raised, no weapon visible. Let her go, he called out, his voice echoing through the empty space. You want me, not her. The man laughed. Randy Wood, walking into a trap. I never thought I'd see the day. I'm here, Randy said, still moving forward with careful, measured steps. Let Julia go, and you can have whatever you want. What I want, the man said, is you dead. The gun pressed harder against my temple. I whimpered, unable to stop myself. Randy's eyes found mine across the distance. In them, I saw something that made my breath catch, apology, determination, and something that looked heartbreakingly like love. You're not walking out of here, Wood, the man said. Randy's expression never changed. But his eyes went dark. Neither are you. Everything happened at once. Randy moved, faster than should have been possible. Something flashed in his hand, when had he drawn a weapon, and gunfire erupted. The man holding me jerked back, a red bloom spreading across his chest. Chaos exploded. More men emerged from the shadows, weapons firing. Randy dove behind a concrete pillar, returning fire with deadly precision. Each shot found its mark. Each movement was calculated, efficient, lethal. This wasn't the Randy who'd kissed me in his penthouse. This wasn't the man who'd made me coffee and listened to me talk about wedding details. This was the Randy Wood that other dangerous men feared. Someone cut my zip ties, I didn't see who. I rolled off the chair and crawled behind a stack of crates, my ears ringing from the gunfire. Then suddenly, silence. I peered around the crates. Bodies littered the floor. Randy stood in the center of the warehouse, chest heaving, covered in blood, I couldn't tell how much was his. The gun hung loose in his hand. The man in the expensive suit lay motionless at his feet. Julia. Randy's voice was rough. Where are you? Here, I called weakly, standing on shaking legs. Randy spun toward me, and the relief that flooded his face was so raw it hurt to witness. He crossed the distance between us in seconds, hands cupping my face, searching for injuries. Are you hurt? Did they? I'm okay. I managed. I'm okay. He pulled me against his chest, one hand cradling the back of my head, the other wrapped tight around my waist. I felt him trembling, or maybe that was me. You stupid, reckless, his voice broke. You could have died. I'm sorry. I sobbed into his blood-stained shirt. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have left. I should have. Sho. Randy pressed his lips to my hair. You're safe. That's all that matters. I pulled back just enough to see his face. Blood splattered his cheek. A cut above his eyebrow dripped red. But his eyes held such fierce, possessive protectiveness that it stole my breath. You came for me, I whispered. Always, Randy said simply. Julia, I will always come for you. Something shifted in my chest, understanding clicking into place like the final piece of a puzzle. This man had lied to me.
Killed for me.
Destroyed people to keep me safe. He was dangerous, possessive, violent, everything I should run from. But when death had pressed cold metal to my temple, when I'd thought I'd never see another sunrise, there had been only one face in my mind. Only one name on my lips.
Randy.
Take me home, I whispered. Randy's arms tightened around me. Which home? I met his eyes, saw the question there, the hope he was trying to hide. Yours, I said softly. Take me to yours. Something that might have been relief or joy or vindication crossed his face. He kissed me then, hard and desperate, tasting of blood and smoke and promises neither of us could keep but would die trying to. When we finally broke apart, sirens wailed in the distance. We need to go, Randy murmured against my lips.
Now.
He took my hand and led me out of that warehouse of death and into the light. And I followed, not because I had no choice, but because I'd finally made one. I chose him. God help me, I chose Randy Wood. 6 weeks later, I stood outside Rosewoods, staring at the entrance like I had that first night. So much had changed since then. Everything had changed. After the warehouse, Randy had taken me back to his penthouse, not as a hostage or a temporary guest, but as something more permanent. Something neither of us had dared to name at first. The threats had ended with the bodies in that warehouse. Randy's enemies were dead or scattered, and word had spread through the underground that Julia Bell was untouchable. That touching me meant war with Randy Wood. And no one wanted that war. I'd gone back to work eventually, though I'd moved out of my old apartment into Randy's penthouse. My friends asked questions I couldn't fully answer. Emma thought I was crazy for dating someone so quickly after Marcus, but she didn't know the truth.
Couldn't know.
Some secrets were too dangerous to share. The police had closed Marcus's missing persons case. A body had been found, unidentifiable, but with his dental records. Officially, he'd been killed in a dispute with unknown criminals.
Case closed.
I'd mourned him, in my own way. Mourned the man I'd thought I'd known, even if that man had never really existed. But I couldn't mourn forever. And Randy had been patient. He'd given me space to grieve, to process, to decide if I could truly live in his world. He never pressured me, never demanded more than I could give. But every morning I woke up in his bed, his arm around my waist, I knew I'd already made my choice. Now, standing outside this restaurant, I was about to make it again. I smoothed down my dress, deep green velvet, the same one I'd worn that first night, and walked inside. The hostess recognized me immediately. Ms. Bell, your table is ready. She led me to the same corner where this had all begun. The same candlelight flickering on white tablecloth. The same view of the city through rain-streaked windows. But this time, the chair across from me wasn't empty. Randy sat waiting, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, White shirt open at the collar, just enough to show the tattoos on his neck. His dark hair was slicked back, his expression composed. But his eyes tracked my every movement as I approached. "You came," he said softly as I sat down. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I wasn't sure." Randy's lips curved slightly. "You've surprised me before." I smiled despite myself, remembering my disastrous attempt to run. That was different. Was it? A waiter appeared with champagne. Expensive, judging by the label. Randy must have ordered ahead. He poured 2 glasses and slid one across to me. "What are we celebrating?" I asked. 6 weeks, Randy said simply. "Since the night everything changed." I picked up my glass, studying him in the candlelight. He looked different somehow, less guarded, maybe. Or perhaps I was just finally seeing him clearly. "You should have run that night," Randy said quietly, echoing words he'd spoken before. I took a sip of champagne, letting the bubbles dance on my tongue. "Maybe," I agreed. "But you whispered instead." Randy leaned forward, and suddenly we were back in that moment. His breath against my ear, his voice low and commanding, the world narrowing to just the 2 of us. "And you listened," he murmured. For a moment, the restaurant faded away. The other diners, the soft jazz, the clinking of silverware, all of it disappeared until there was only Randy's dark eyes holding mine, only the candlelight flickering between us, only the weight of everything we'd survived. Everything that should have destroyed us, but somehow hadn't. "I did more than listen," I said softly. "I trusted you. Even when I shouldn't have. Even when every instinct screamed to run." Randy reached across the table and took my hand. His thumb traced circles on my palm, a touch that had become familiar, comforting, mine. "I killed for you," he said quietly. No apology in his voice, just truth. "I lied to you. I dragged you into a world you should never have seen." "I know. And you stayed anyway." "I did." I turned my hand in his, interlacing our fingers. Because somewhere between the fear and the lies and the violence, I realized something. "What's that?" "That you were telling the truth that first night," I said. "You weren't a stranger. Maybe you never were. Maybe." I paused, searching for the right words. "Maybe some whispers aren't warnings. Maybe they're invitations." Randy's expression shifted, surprise giving way to something deeper, something that looked like hope mixed with wonder. "And if they are?" I squeezed his hand. "Then I guess I finally accepted yours." Randy's smile was slow and genuine and absolutely beautiful. "Took you long enough." I laughed, actually laughed, the sound surprising us both. "I had to make sure you were worth the risk. And the jury's still out," I teased. Randy stood and moved to my side of the table. He pulled me to my feet, one hand settling on my waist, the other still holding mine. "Let me convince you," he murmured against my hair. "Randy, we're in a restaurant." "I don't care." He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. "Julia Bell, I love you. I've loved you since I saw you sitting alone in a green dress waiting for someone who is never going to show. I loved you when you slapped me and called me a monster. I loved you when you ran, when you stayed, when you chose me despite every reason not to." My breath caught. We'd danced around these words for weeks, but neither of us had said them out loud. "I love you," Randy repeated, his voice rough with emotion. "And I need you to know, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret trusting me that night." Tears pricked my eyes. "Randy." "You don't have to say it back," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know." I reached up and cupped his face, feeling the familiar roughness of his jaw beneath my palm. "You idiot," I whispered. "I love you too. I've loved you since you walked into that warehouse with your hands raised, ready to die for someone who'd left you. How could I not?" Randy's eyes closed briefly, like my words were a prayer he'd been waiting his whole life to hear. Then he kissed me. Slow and deep and full of promises. Promises of protection and possession, of darkness and light, of a future that would never be simple, but would always be ours. When we finally broke apart, the restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners were watching, some smiling, some looking away, giving us privacy in our public moment. Randy didn't seem to notice or care. He rested his forehead against mine. "Take me home," I whispered. "Which home?" he asked, echoing the question from the warehouse. But this time, the answer was different. "Ours," I said. "Take me to ours." Randy's smile was pure joy. He dropped money on the table, probably too much, but he never cared about things like that, and led me toward the exit. As we passed our table, I glanced back one last time. The candle between our chairs burned low, wax pooling at its base, flame guttering in the soft breeze from the door. The same candle, or one just like it, that had burned the night everything changed. The night a dangerous man had whispered a warning that became an invitation. The night I'd listened, and found myself falling into a love that should have destroyed me, but instead made me whole. Randy's hand found mine as we stepped out into the night. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under streetlights, the city alive and beautiful and ours. "No regrets?" Randy asked quietly as we walked toward his car. I looked up at him. This man who'd killed for me, lied for me, loved me despite every reason not to.
"Not one," I said.
And I meant it, because some stories don't have neat endings. Some love isn't safe or simple or easy to explain, but it's real. And sometimes real is enough. Randy opened the car door for me, and I slid inside. As we drove through the city toward our home, I realized something. I'd come to that restaurant 6 weeks ago looking for a chance at love, at connection, at something more than my carefully controlled life. And I'd found it, just not in the way I'd expected. Not in a safe, boring accountant who'd turn out to be a thief, but in a dangerous man with dark eyes and darker secrets who'd whispered a warning that changed everything. Who'd seen me at my most vulnerable and decided I was worth saving, worth protecting, worth loving. Randy's hand found mine across the console, and I held on tight. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For whispering," I said simply. "That night, when you could have walked away." Randy lifted my hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to my knuckles. "I couldn't," he said quietly. "From the moment I saw you, Julia, I was yours. I just had to wait for you to become mine too." I smiled, leaning my head against his shoulder as the city lights blurred past the windows, and thought, maybe the best love stories don't start with meet cuties and fairy tales. Maybe they start with danger and lies and impossible choices. Maybe they start with a whisper in the dark. And maybe, just maybe, they end with two broken people finding something whole in each other. Something worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth living for. Randy and I had found that. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Not even for the safe, simple life I'd once imagined. Because this dangerous, complicated, beautiful this was real. And real was everything.